Hey guys, today I just want to show you how this platform works. Today we're going to analyze MBUU boats because uh, you guys probably never came in contact with this company, and yeah, we just want to take a fresh look on a new company. So let's show you how this works. So first of all, in this big box, you need to enter in your ticker symbol. Now here it is MBUU for Malibu Boats Inc. Then you can enter what type of graph you want. Obviously, it's not the best graph, doesn't even have an axis, but it's just to see where the price is going. So you can see Malibu Boats is really just going up. Let's see the first tab here. Uh, so there's kind of a lot of things going on here, but first of all, let's take a look at this chart. So there's three metrics here: revenue, net income, profit margin. So revenue is the turnover of the company, and you can see uh, the growth over the last 8 years in this chart. And same with net income. Income is just all of the earnings of the company. You can see that over an 8-year period also. And then the profit margin is basically the percentage of the revenue that is the net income, which means that how much percent of their revenue goes towards their net income. Uh, and the profit margin, you can also see that it has gone up over the last 8 years for Malibu boats, which is amazing. Hence all of these ticks. These just check if all of these are growing. Let's move on to the next one. So similarly to the first one, we have revenue and then free cash flow. Free cash flow is cash from operations. It's very similar to net income, free cash flow. Free cash flow is cash in and cash out from the company. Net income, though, is just the cash that they make from selling their products minus all of the expenses. So it's a little bit different. Usually there will be similar numbers. So you can see here it was 7, here it was 14. That is a big jump. Usually you won't have double earnings of the net income. So you can see here that it got to a more stable level of 150 and 100. Usually the net income and free cash flow are pretty much the same. So free cash flow and profit margin, these are also very similar, sorry. And free cash flow margin basically does the same as profit margin, but for free cash flow. And I don't know, it's free cash flow profit margin. It's just supposed to be free cash flow margin. Um, and you can see that the free cash flow margin here was very low, although the profit margin was very high. And that's why these two numbers are so far apart. Same ticks as before, check for if it's growing, and then on the right side you have a graph, or a chart. This one shows you just this chart. It shows you this this table in the form of a chart. So you can see that you can pick between profit margin and free cash flow margin, but they basically are the same thing. They're just here's free cash flow, here's net income, right? So profit margin is this one, and free cash flow margin is that one. So if we go to the profit margin chart, you can see that this is the revenue, the dark blue one. It's imported from these numbers. There you can see the net income, that is the light green one. That one is here, and then this one uh, is the profit margin. Now you can see that the percentages are actually on the other side, so that's how it works. Now, for the free cash flow margin chart, it's the same thing. So blue is revenue, right? This part, free cash flow, is the light green, and then free cash flow margin is the darker orange. If we move on to the ratios here, you can see that for the profit margin, uh, it's basically just says this the profit margin right now is 13%. Here it was for the last year 13%, as you can see. And then this is the average of the sector. So sometimes it will just do 9%, which is the average of the market, because, for example, Malibu Boats uh, doesn't really have a specific sector. It's kind of just a boat company. So that's when it's just going to give you the average of the market, but still a very nice profit margin from Malibu Boats. Then you see the PE ratio compared to the industry average. Uh, Same there. So you can see that Malibu Boats is way ahead, or way cheaper than its competitors. And then the price of free cash flow uh, is right there. It basically shows you, um, this tick basically shows you if if the price of free cash flow here is lower than the 5-year average price of free cash flow. So that's how that works. And then the ROIC is a very complicated metric. It's basically the return on invested capital, hence called ROIC, and it basically shows you the capability of the management. Plus, it's a very good metric for knowing the growth of the future earnings. Because if you have a big return on invested capital, then it's easier for you to grow your earnings. Then here on the right side chart, the bigger right side chart right here, you can see the PE ratio and the price to free cash flow ratio over a what is this, 7-8 year period, sorry, actually 9-year period. And then on the left side chart you can see the return on invested capital uh over the last 8 years, also 9 years, sorry, it's from 2014. Then financial health, um big table here. So first of all is the total current assets. This can be cash, it can be short-term investments, receivables, and stuff like that. Total current liabilities, on the other hand, might be something that they have to pay to someone in the next, well, basically in the short term. Then total long-term assets is basically anything they got from property and equipment to other stuff that can't necessarily be sold. And then total long-term liabilities is their long-term debt and other stuff that doesn't have to be paid in the short term. Then we got the shares outstanding. Uh, this chart is over 5 years, over a 5-year period. The shares outstanding is the total number of shares that there are for the entire company. So if you wanted to buy the entire company, you would have to buy 21 million shares in 2022. We want to see this number go down. Right now it's going up a little bit. We want it to go down because um, if you buy $100 uh, of a company, and the company, if you buy an entire company for $100, and then the company generates $10 per per year, and the number of shares, well, actually, let's explain in a different way, right? So you buy any stock for $10, and you get a 1% stake of the company, right? You own 1% of the entire company, and right now there are 100 shares. And if the company buys back its shares, and now there are only 90 shares, then your value of the investment is still $10, except you have a you have a 1 point, I just deleted the whole thing, you have a 1.1 periodic percentage rate of stake. You have a 1.1 periodic percentage stake of the company. And what this helps you do is that if you have a bigger stake of the company, a bigger stake at the company, you basically get more earnings per what you have bought, right? And then for the total debt, it's just the total debt, right? And then free cash flow is free cash flow. We've already discussed that one. Now these ticks mostly just check if it's growing, so of course we want the total current assets to be growing. We want the total current liabilities to be declining, growing, declining, 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 and growing. So for Malibu boats, the situation isn't as great. But let's move on to the dividend, which Malibu boats does not pay a dividend. But let's actually, for the shorter term, put in a company that does. I'm just trying to get a company that actually. Let's just go into TradingView and. Oh yeah. Right. Philip and Morris, right? Let's get a dividend, and you can see that the dividend yield is right there. So you can see that the dividend yield is actually declining for Philip and Morris. And then the payout ratio is also kind of just stable, actually. And right now, the dividend yield in the last quarter actually grown. And then the payout ratio right now is a little bigger. But anyway, on the right side, you can see the chart of the payout ratio and the dividend yield. That's pretty trivial. But one important thing to check when you're looking for dividends is that you can see here, right, that we have a pretty nice dividend of about 5 to 6%. Right now it's about 5.29%. It is, however, very important to look at the payout ratio. This ratio is the total percentage of earnings that they pay as a dividend to shareholders. So, if the earnings of the company is 1,000 and it pays out a 86% payout ratio, then it pays out $86 to its shareholders. And what we want to see is this not to be 86, but around $50 for it to make up a 50% payout ratio. Because if the payout ratio is more than 100, that means that it's actually the company is paying out more than they have made from net income. And if it's paying even above like 50%, the company it doesn't have enough cash for maintenance and reinvesting more cash into the company. And then it has to take a lot of other debt, and it can't really pay down debt if the payout ratio is so huge. That is why it is very important to look at the payout ratio, not only the dividend. So let's go back to Malibu Boats. Let's go to the summary and valuation. So first of all, we have this chart here. It's not a chart, it's a table. Sorry. This table right here. With a lot of checks and X's, and it just looks weird. But it's actually not that complex. So here in the first pillar or column, you have what it basically is. So you can see the first one is 5-year revenue growth higher than 0%. Yes, it is bigger. It is actually 144% over the last 5 years. And then let's go through each one of these. So 5-year profit margin growth, higher than zero. Yes, it has grown by more than 100%. 5-year free cash flow margin growth, no, it has declined by 6%. Profit margin higher than sector average. Yes, it is at 12.97%. PE smaller than sector average. Yes, it is. 5-year price to free cash flow smaller than 15. No, it's not. It's 15.10. ROIC bigger than 10. Yes, a huge 55%. Current assets divided by current assets divided by current liabilities bigger than 1.2. Yes, that's huge. This metric uh, basically shows you uh, how much current assets they have compared to their current liabilities, and how much long-term assets they have compared to their long-term liabilities. And you see that in these two ratios for long-term and current. Now, this is very important because if a company has, I don't know, 200 current liabilities and only $10 worth of current assets, then something is wrong in the company because it just doesn't add up, you know? How can you have that many current liabilities? And you have to look into that. So, next metric is debt to free cash flow smaller than 3. This is also the time that it takes for the company to pay all its debt in years. So it would take 1.09 years to pay the debt with the current free cash flow, and yes, it is smaller than a 3. It is 1.09. And then the average share change. This is annually. And then over the last 5 years, right? And it's 3.22. We want to see the number of shares decline. So not the best there. And now let's go on to this. Well, it's kind of a calculator. Let's go to this part. So, first of all, you have a 1 year, 5-year, a 10-year period for the historical average. This basically shows you the revenue growth, profit margin, free cash flow margin, PE, price to free cash flow, and it does not show you the discount rate. That is for you to choose. It shows you that for a 1 year, a 5-year, and a 10-year period right here. And then you have to decide on the revenue, profit margin, free cash flow margin, PE, price to free cash flow, and discount rate in your assumptions. Now, you can make 3 scenarios, a low, a mid, and a high. So let's go through this, how you would do this. So, first of all, you have revenue growth. Now, if you go to the growth chart, you can see that it absolutely, Malibu Boats has huge growth, like it just goes to the skies. But you cannot copy this and paste it right there. Plus, they got an influx of cash in COVID. A lot of people bought the boats. So I'm actually going to go for here at only a 0. I'm going to go for a 2% growth, 4% growth, and 6% growth. Very conservative. Why? Because if we cannot predict the future. We don't know what is going to happen. So we need to be conservative, because if we're not right and go really and set really aggressive targets, well, then we're kind of screwed. And also, the probability of us being wrong when we set really aggressive targets is much bigger. Now let's go to the profit margin. So, for the profit margin, Malibu Boats have a 10-year profit margin. Basically, they just got a huge profit margin the last year. So I'm going to say 9, 10, and 11 if they crush it in the high scenario. For the free cash flow margin, I'm gonna say 8, 9, and 10. Then for the PE, I'm gonna go 10, 11, 12, 10, 11, 12. And then for the discount rate, we're just going to keep it here. The discount rate is basically the desired percentual return, but it basically discounts the free cash flow over that 10-year period. Don't really have to know what it is. I just keep it at 11, 12.5, 14%. Another great thing you can do here is 10, 11, and 12. It also works, but 11, 12.5, and 14 are much more conservative, and 12.5 is what you want to get from the market, I would say, annually. And that's my goal, so that's what I keep. And you can see that Malibu Boats is actually really, well, it's pretty undervalued. Uh, the mid and the high scenario are in the green, and the low scenario is almost there. But there is one problem with with these numbers. They are not with a margin of safety. Usually, I like to add at least a 20% margin of safety, so that if these estimates are wrong, I can still make something of that investment because I still have that 20% margin of safety. And then that is your buy price. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to go to the description, click on File, make a copy. This spreadsheet is fully free. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe. And I'm gonna see you next time.